And we ought to be good. There he is. There he is. Hi, Bob. You there?
Yeah.
There you are.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah, we're good.
That sounds better.
Hey,
you were off in the distance there.
I understand. Yesterday, we had our helpful home improvement message brought to you by Lesser Lumber, and it was all about getting your lawn going here in the springtime with all kinds of different hints and tips, and I thought I'd get you to comment on some of them. One of the things that they talked about was mulching with the grass clippings that you cut. And how valuable that is to your lawn. Sometimes we think, got to rake that stuff off of there, get all those grass clippings off so it doesn't turn brown and look bad. But actually, it works better for your lawn in terms of its nutritional value if you just leave those trimmings on, right?
Yes, it's a form of recycling. In this case, we're recycling nutrients. Once the leaf blades break down, they will return some of the nutrients that were in that plant right back and recycle them so the plant can use them again. Mm-hmm. So from your fertilization activities and then the organic matter value, although there's, most of the leaf tissue is mostly water, but you still get a little bit of value there mm-hmm. Over time. So, so there's good reasons to do that. And it's efficient, as long as you're mowing often enough, that, those clippings go right back. You really don't see them mm-hmm. for the most part. They'll work their way down into the soil surface where they'll decay, and we keep the cycle going.
Yeah. Well, one of
so
the
you can
things...
almost, just one more comment there, you can almost reduce your fertilization rates, reduce them by about a third. Mm-hmm. Just by regularly recycling.
Yeah. Well, hold on to that number, that 1/3 ratio that you were talking about, because one of the other recommendations was to cut your grass to about 2/3 of its height. In other words, you're cutting 1/3 off of the blade of grass in order to do it at its best efficiency. Is that a good number?
Yes. Because we never want to cut it down to the bare ground. Oftentimes, we're cutting too much off. We're cutting at least half the leaf surface off. Mm-hmm. So that stresses the plant. You may not really see it to look at it, but it does. When we're taking more than that third off, 25% to a third off, then that does stress the plant. The plant has to work harder because it's lost that leaf surface. And, of course, having the leaf surface there is how the plant photosynthesizes and makes its own food. And so we need that leaf surface there. The mm-hmm. Another reason to have that leaf surface there is it helps shade the ground. When we cut it too short, then you see more bare ground. It opens up the canopy. It allows the temperature to go up, the soil temperature mm-hmm. to go up more because the sun's beating down there and there's nothing to protect that soil surface. So that's another stressor to the plant, really. And when we get light going down to the soil, then that also encourages weed seeds to grow. Uh-huh. So we kind of do ourselves a disservice, by cutting too short and taking too much off. Mm-hmm. Both those things. Well,
the question then becomes in the early spring when it really takes off and it's uneven and you've got the big clumps of really fast growing grass and it gets really thick and hard to get the mower through. And right next to it is an area that's not growing nearly as fast. And you're trying to make that a nice even lawn. You're probably going to take off more than that 1/3 when you get through those high patches, and just in order to even it up and get it to a uniform length. Correct?
Yes, probably. Yeah, you kind of have to balance how often you do it. Of course, in the spring, we typically have to mow more often. It's just because of the nature of the grass growing quicker. or should be mowing more often. And then as we get warmer and the days get longer and we maybe get drier and the grass starts to slow down a bit, then we can lengthen those mowings out. So, overall it averages out to once a week over the season, but early on it's going to be more often or should be more often. And in those first couple, and it might be 2 or 3 mowings right off the bat in the spring where you do have that uneven growth. And that comes back because there's different species of grass, which have a little bit of different growth habit. Or you might have some weedy species of grass in there. Now, in some, there are some fescues. There are grasses that we would normally use in animal agriculture that can sometimes creep into our yards, and those will be more vigorous growing, taller growing species that, we could get seeds coming in. And so you could have these little patches or tufts, essentially bunch grasses that get started that, yes, they don't grow at the same rate as the turf grasses normally do. So you can have more uneven growth there.
Of course, the weeds, they have their opportunity to grow in the spring, too, and they're just as aggressive as the grasses are. And dandelion season is, it begins at about the same time as grass growing season. I guess if you get freaked out by dandelions and you try to treat, you're going to spend an awful lot of aggravating time out there. Do we have to just basically say, yeah, I got to accept the dandelions too because it's just too much?
They can definitely be managed or at least minimized. A lot of that will, be based on what's happening around you. If there's dandelions everywhere or if there's fields of them, then it's more challenging to keep them under control in your yard. Still can be done, but it just takes more effort to keep them out because you have such a big resource of seeds blowing around and getting started.
Yeah, it's going to be awful tough to keep them away when that happens, and then the broadleaf that is left behind. That to me is a bigger issue than the actual dandelion flower. Is the broadleaf that's left behind.
Yes, so it's still a growing plant that's taking up space. It can crowd out the grass, especially when it's dense enough, and it can be, where most of the, a bigger percentage of the yard, when you look down, is this broadleaf material versus the grass. So, yes, they can take over. Of course, those plants, dandelions specifically are a biennial weed. So they grow a green leafy plant first season, and they have a taproot just like a carrot. And, of course, that continues to develop, and then the second season, then they will flower and go back to seed, and then that plant dies. But there's always one to replace it, it seems.
How about that? Of course, we'll deal with things like bare patches and everything. We'll talk about that as the season goes along. But it's just about time to get those lawnmower blades all sharpened up and get the rake and off you go, huh?
Yeah. Get started and clean up areas. It's a good time to soil test if you haven't done that last fall. Take a soil test of the yard so that you know what your nutrient levels are. The big thing there, too, is, do you need to apply lime or not? Of course, the soil test results will tell you whether you need to and then how much per 1,000 square feet you need to apply.
Yeah. All right. So all of that, we'll talk about that as the spring goes on. Bob, thanks so much.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
All right. You too.
It is the voice of Indiana County. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com.